Hi everyone, welcome to Off the Podium. I have a singer with me today, Reggie Mobley. Welcome to Off the Podium.
Thank you.
Thanks for taking the time to talk to me. What's the plan? Why are you in Seattle?
Why am I Seattle? Well, Westland Distillery is why I'm here.
Mm.
No, really, I have a concert this weekend with Pacific Music Works. That's titled "Every Time I Feel the Spirit," which is kind of a showcase and celebration of American music that's also written by Black composers. So it won't be completely music of Black composers, but it's heavily influenced by that. There'll be mostly Scott Joplin, Florence Price, Rosamond Johnson, several, and then there'll be I think a little Stephen Foster. There'll be reels of a few other just American composers from the 19th, 20th century. So it's all just a big Americana concert. That'll be cool.
What got you started in music? What led you to be a singer?
Well, originally I actually had an interview about this morning. Actually, I wanted to be an artist. My high school, I'm from Gainesville, Florida originally, and my high school was a drafting and architecture faculty. And so I started in that program, and I also I went through the art courses and even had a part-time job at a graphic arts company in Gainesville as a part-time job as a high schooler. And my thoughts were that I would be an artist or an architect of some sort when I graduated from college. My wrist said otherwise. I started developing carpal tunnel syndrome, and things got a little more difficult. And I, at the time, was playing in the band, was playing trumpet, and I played keyboard in the class keyboard, independent study at my high school. And the keyboard teacher was also the chorus teacher, and she decided that she wanted more men in the chorus, and took me to her office and had me sing for her and said, "You need to be singing."
Wow.
So my senior year of high school, I switched one of my art courses for chorus, and she was able to help me get a few voice lessons in town, and it was great. But I still hadn't desired to do anything with music. Towards the last half of my senior year, I was awarded a scholarship at Davidson College, North Carolina, for art, and that was what I wanted to do. But towards the end of my senior year, it turned out that the wrist problems were getting worse, and I really decided that I maybe didn't want to do this. And my mother and guidance counselor and course teacher and myself, we all got together, and we found an HBCU, Historical Black College University, which is also tied with my faith, Seventh-day Adventism, in Huntsville, Alabama, Oakwood College. So it's Oakwood University now, but at the time it was Oakwood College. And they mostly matched my art scholarship for music. So I took an immediate left turn at the end of high school and decided to attend Oakwood College for trumpet performance. I immediately went into voice lessons there. Wasn't sure I liked it. I sang as a tenor, baritone in high school, and my last year of high school and in college, and wasn't great, but it was something. And I tried around with with composition. I experimented with that. I experimented with conducting in the music department there, taking a few lessons, and nothing ever really. Everything was just trying for something. I knew that I needed to be in music, but nothing ever really fit. So after that year, I went back to Florida, and eventually ended up taking voice lessons while at the University of Florida in Gainesville. And I sang tenor in the choir there, and I also sang in a barbershop quartet. And in this collegiate quartet, I sang the top tenor line. Which really, the style and the way it works puts you in that alto countertenor range without really knowing what it is. And so I sang that more and more, realizing that I was developing this specific style. And one day we were in the common area in front of the Phi Mu Alpha board, I remember, and my professor didn't see him, but he just happened to be around the corner. We were just kind of singing through one of the chorus pieces because we're nerds, and I sang the alto part, because Reginald Mobley was there. And so he heard it, he saw it, came around the corner, and grabbed me and took me to his office. So the thing about countertenor singing, especially in the South or especially in the States, is the countertenor, even with David Daniels and Brian Asawa and so forth, the idea of choosing to be a countertenor still wasn't necessarily respected in a lot of circles. It was it's a choice, not a voice. Things like that, and no one ever really thought it was safe or healthy for a young singer, male singer, to do. It was detrimental to the work that your teacher was doing to make you a proper tenor or proper baritone. So I knew I was screwed, and so he went to his office and he sat down at the keyboard at the piano and played an E flat major scale, E4, E flat 4, no C, and he said, sing the scale. So I sang the scale, octave below, in my quasi tenor barit crap range, and he said, no, sing it where I play. And so I sang it, and so he went up, and then he went down, and he played around with arpeggios and scales, and then stopped and just stared at the piano and stared at me, and he's like, do you know what you are? And I'm like, I'm in trouble. He's like, no, you're a countertenor. You're a naturally gifted countertenor. I haven't heard one quite like you, and I, of course, was completely shocked, and the only thing I could think to say was, what's a countertenor? And I think he at that point decided I was also an idiot, and I didn't realize this, I didn't know this, of course, but he went to Michigan University and was in the same studio, George Shirley's studio, with David Daniels when he became a countertenor. Wow. And so he'd always known about countertenors, and he sang somehow to himself. And so he took this disc off his shelf. It was David Daniels' first album, his Handel opera arias, and said, take this home. Listen to this. When you come back next week, this is what you'll be doing for the rest of your life. So I took it home, listened to it, saw this man with a beard singing in a range and a voice that I never expected was that of a male. And that was my big Kaiser Sose moment when I realized that, hearing Michael Chance on John Elliott Gardner recordings of Bach, I was like, oh, it actually is Michael Chance. It's not some weird spelling of Michelle. And I realized that, I had these albums that someone had given me of Andreas Scholl, some of his earlier albums, because the mind works the way it works. It's like, oh, well, this is just a very large German woman who looks like Katie Lang. It was that moment. It was that Kaiser Sose moment where all of a sudden it comes to focus that, oh my God, these were men. And this is a style this is something I'd never known. And so it was so shocking for me, but just so liberating because for the first time in my life, the ability to freely express myself that I had in art, where what I saw and wanted to draw, what I wanted to sketch, what I wanted to paint, I could now do with music. As a tenor, a baritone, as a trumpet player, as playing keyboard, as whatever I did, there was always this wall that didn't allow me to truly express myself in the way that I felt I could. And I just assumed that was just part of the struggle of being a musician. And once I saw that I could have that ready access to what I can do, I almost felt like a fraud. I thought this is too easy. Little I know it was going to get a hell of a lot harder, but since then it's just, this is what I do. This is how I can express myself. And I didn't just stop in learning a few Handel arias. I grew up in jazz and gospel, and so I sang jazz and gospel as a countertenor. I still do. I sing musical theater. I still sing barbershop from time to time, and everything I do, I come from where I have the most ability to maneuver and to express myself.
Early music was a natural choice, or
it was not a natural choice, but yes, a natural choice. like I said, I grew up in gospel and jazz and was around that kind of music all from early childhood.
Mm.
Period. My grandma, I was raised with, lived with my grandparents growing up. Whenever I started band and started listening to classical music, she hated it. She called that funny music. She didn't really like having in the house. But she also told me to never trust Yankees or the blue-eyed devil. So maybe she's just that much more sage than I really give her credit. No, but in high school, I started listening to CDs at the public library, which I could walk to pretty easily, and there were all these like random sampler albums of the Freedom March Marionette and Island Ball Mountain and Pocket Ball Cannon and Albidoni, all these things, and it was always the Baroque pieces that I really loved the most. Wow. But even though it was still in a style, not in the period style, so, these were all recordings from before period practice became a thing. But something about it just always fit for me, and once I became a countertenor, I started learning more about early music and the period movement and so forth, and seeing how much freedom and expression that was allowed the actual artists themselves, allowed the musicians themselves, as opposed to the paint by number, do this way, this marking, you must be here. You were a live part of the process. As someone singing Handel or Bach or a solo cantata, the continuo players, string players, all of us were a part of the music making process with the composer himself there, and that was something that I inherently knew from growing up around jazz and gospel. So that same spirit of expression and freedom that exists in the music of my childhood and the music of that I just knew, I saw there. And so it was just a natural progression. Change a few rules, but riffs and turns and ornaments are just as easily done in Baroque music in almost the same way as I would do them in gospel or in jazz. And so it just, everything made sense. Everything kind of in a roundabout way led to all of this. I probably maybe instill a little too much jazz influence in my Baroque singing. I get yelled at sometimes for crooning or sliding around too much. But within reason, I think it's fine, and everyone I work with seems to like it. So why stop?
And for those of you who haven't listened, check out the website. I'll post it. I'll make sure it's underneath the link here, and also find them on YouTube. There's plenty of recordings out there that I listen to today, especially. Being an African-American Black artist, musician, do you see many African-Americans or Blacks in our field, in classical music field?
No, there aren't many. And those of us that are there typically, I would say the bulk of, and I'll say Black. I hate the term African American.
It's funny you said that, because I don't know if you know George Walker, a Black composer, Pulitzer Prize winning composer. I had him on my podcast, a legendary figure for American orchestral music and composer. I had him on, and he said the same thing, and he had the same response to what I said. But then I've also talked to other people on and off record, and they've said the opposite. They said, "Yeah, call me African American." So I would love to hear your.
I did my DNA sequencing. I did 23andMe, and I'm 10% Irish. I'm 14% Northern European. My grandmother was Native American. I'm like 1% Sardinian. I mean, it's. And the thing is that I'm from Gainesville, Florida. I consider myself Southern before American. I am of African descent, of course. But I'm an American. I am a Black American. When I go to the UK or go to Europe or go to Japan, I'm just an American. But when I come home, I'm quantified. I'm hyphenated American.
Yeah.
I can't be the same status of American as as another white person.
Okay.
And that really bothers me. Don't just look me up on YouTube and things. Go and find Smokey Robinson's kind of live poetry reading of Being Black and Proud.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we are.
Yeah.
We're black.
Yeah.
And so I prefer that.
Well, black musicians in
Yes.
the States, in the world, not too many in the classical field.
Right.
Why?
Going back to where you were there, I don't know fully what the reason is. I have many guesses as to why this is, and I think a lot of it stems back to the fact that in recent times, in modern times, classical music has been stigmatized as the music for the elite, the long hair, the white hair. These are old, white, wealthy people who use this. This is not music for common folk. This is not, especially black folk are, immigrants are, this is not for them. This is for the symphony hall crowd.
Yeah. And
I think we kind of avoid that because not only does it have that stigma of being elitist and inaccessible to people, but also a lot of our music has been put on this weird pedestal of, and whereas again, when I go back to the idea of the whole paint by numbers thing, where we're not allowed to have any sort of access or ownership in this music, and I think that's probably why I love Baroque music so much, is I feel like I'm a part of the process, and part of that also is because, by no serious fault, the gatekeepers of classical music, as far as music history and understanding of it goes, has been kind of held by the straight white male figure. You can only, the composers are straight white men.
Yeah.
And,
most of them.
But how much attention do we really give to, Nannerl, or Clara, or Fanny?
Yeah.
And now Florence Price. How much attention do we give to Kotzlani and Hildegard? Like true access to this. And we're also, you can't hide female composers, but you can hide composers of color. You can hide composers who happen to be queer.
Yeah.
And that's a part of it as well. It's blacks especially, but really gays as well. It's the being able to look and see ourselves as being a part of this genre has been hidden from us, has been basically taken from us.
Yeah.
And that's not really fair.
Yeah.
And so I think part of it is that. I think that's part of it. And also there are still issues with race, and especially with many people of non-whites, people of color, falling on the lower side of that economic divide.
Yeah. And the economic divide is a big thing because, if we look at the pop entertainment, or if we look at jazz, there's a lot of black artists. If we look at basketball and baseball and football, there's a lot of black athletes.
Yes.
If we look at figure skating, if we look at tennis, if we look at golf, if we look at classical music, those are all the sports and classical music. It just takes a lot of resources, a lot of money to take your kid to the festivals. My parents weren't able to afford me going to festivals growing up, but a lot of people that I went to school with, I realized that they all went to festival growing up, never went to festivals, and that helps you, that gets you connections. Where if you come from a background that you didn't have money, you're not going to be able to make those connections or go to those festivals and make those connections, not only with teachers but colleagues. If you don't take private lessons with these renowned figures, then you can't. So all of these barriers that exist, and the same thing is in tennis, same thing is in golf. That's why you see very few black athletes in those sports.
Absolutely.
So the economic status has so much to do with all of this, and it's deep rooted. So it's it's so tough. That's why there's so many programs that I really enjoy and I really love that are trying to make that happen for the kids to get access and get experience with
And that
teachers.
may be why a large number of blacks who are in classical music are typically singers or opera singers, because you don't have to pay for a voice.
Yeah.
And lessons will come, and they're typically cheaper. But there's no way my grandma who emptied trash cans at Nationwide Insurance, from 5 p.m. to 1 a.m. could afford a gamba, or or a violin, or even a clarinet. I mean, we rented the trumpet from the school that I played. And yeah, it's a lot of that. And there's also a stigma against pursuing things like that have no promise of success. My mother, my aunt, my grandmother, they wanted me to be successful. They wanted me to live a life where I didn't have to worry about living from check to check.
Yeah.
And there's no promise of that in what we do.
Sure.
But for so many, there was this. I mean, it feels like almost like a lottery system in pursuing things like sports.
Yeah.
That you could potentially get a scholarship, or potentially get a deal if you were good at these things. And I don't know. I think there's a little of that. I don't know, in opera as well. I think that in classical music, that seems to be, especially as a singer, that's really where the chance for stability or fame would be in opera. Certainly not in early music in this country. So I don't think we really think about it. But I honestly, knowing the voices that I've known growing up, and knowing the skills that so many of us have, I mean, God, we would just destroy the early music field if more of us just allowed ourselves to realize that in that genre we could really explore our voices and not fit into a mold, not fit into a box, but be ourselves, and really change things. So
what can we do? But I mean, what can you do as an artist, as a professional artist? What can I do? What can others do to make sure that we have more diversity in classical music? What's our role as professionals?
Hire more Black people. Hire more Asian people.
Yeah.
Hire more Armenian people.
Yeah.
Hire more, just like hire those people. There's this weird wall again where ensembles, vocal and instrumental or so forth, will say, well, we'll hire this Black. They hire the most talented of people of color.
Yeah.
But whenever they have no problem just hiring a mediocre white person.
Yeah.
You know what? Hire a mediocre Black person. We don't all. That's my problem with white privilege. I don't know why it's becoming a political thing, but it's all tied together.
Yeah.
But that's my problem, is that the true gift of white privilege is that you're allowed to be mediocre.
Yeah.
And we're not.
Yeah.
I'm actually a living example of that. I accept that there are things about me as a musician, as a person, that might be seen as above average or exceptional. And so I get hired, I get opportunities. But if I weren't, I can't say that I would be hired over anyone else or at all. And I see this. I see friends and colleagues who are not exceptional, but aren't bad at what they do. And I see them get passed over all the time for less exceptional white singers or instruments of the same quality or less. And that, plus, I mean, for those of us who do early music and concerts in, who seek out spaces like churches, we go to the nice Episcopal church, the Catholic church in a white neighborhood or downtown area. But there are some churches that are just as acoustically sound in black neighborhoods? Why don't and it's statistically shown that areas where entertainment and the arts flourish, it economically it's a magnet to that area because people come and they eat in the area. They pre-game and have a few drinks, or they go and grab gum at the convenience store on the street. Well, why not have it in Jamaica Plain? Why not in the Latin Quarter? Why not have it in the black side of town, and go to that bodega, go to that community, that area, and get yourself a Coke? Why not go to that restaurant around the corner and try that? I mean, go to these areas. Stop ignoring, us. Yeah. And I mean, there's so many other ways. And again, just don't necessarily pursue that just good enough mediocre white composer. Yeah. Find the mediocre black composer. Find the exceptional black composer, and program that music. Yeah. And don't make a big deal of it and just do it once. Yeah. There's no just hiring one or just programming one really and doing it once a season kind of almost falls into line of tokenism. Yeah. It's okay to hire a handful of people of color. Yeah. It's okay to do
But sometimes these organizations do it just to say we did it.
Yeah.
And they just find one person or one they just do it once and they say we did it. It's not it's not about that. You have to do it, or we did it last season, but we're not doing it. Why not do it this season? You have to do it every season. The thing about just growing the field is about consistency. You can't just do it every couple of years and say you've done something.
Exactly.
And the same thing with Amy Beach, who's an American composer, one of the pioneers for women composers, 150th anniversary, and all these major symphony orchestras. I looked up and I actually called 15 of them and asked them the question, why have you not programmed Amy Beach? Many of them hung up on me. A couple of them talked to me. Yes, a couple of major orchestras hung up on me while I was asking the question of why is Amy Beach not on your program, and they didn't have a valid answer. It's her 150th anniversary. When it's a 200th anniversary, 400th anniversary of all these top composers, all of a sudden everyone is programming Mozart or Beethoven, and it's great. I love that. You should keep doing it. But you never program Amy Beach. It's her 150th anniversary, whether you like her or not. She was an important figure for classical music, so you should.
Well, you didn't call me. I did program Amy Beach this year. Once or twice a year, I actually lead a smaller, like a community outreach concert for the Hamlin High Society. And this past November, I built a program based around that kind of the program was called Every Voice. Yeah. And the idea was to focus on Boston as a community by focusing on the great things that make up a part of a community. Yeah. So I split into 3 segments, and so I did a segment on the Black community, and did a segment on youth in Boston. I did a segment on women in Boston. Yeah. And Amy Beach, of course, not just Amy Beach and Julia Ward Howe. Okay. And I did that. I specifically wanted to do that because of Amy Beach's anniversary and the fact that she was the first female composer to be commissioned and programmed by the Hamlin High. So I thought we should bring her back, and I hope to do so with Florence Price, who's an NEC grad. Yeah. And of course, and I did program. If I thought about that, I would have done that. But I also programmed Julia Ward Howe, who grew up in the Republic. Mm-hmm. She was a huge abolitionist, who her and her husband sang in the Hamlin High chorus in the mid-1800s.
Well, it's great because you're doing this, and maybe it's a community level or small professional level. But my frustration is that the major symphony orchestras, you see all of them talk about diversity, equality, and all these things. But then when it comes down to actually doing it and regularly, and the most important thing, as classical musicians, we should understand consistency because that's one thing that we do to make us better, as consistent practice, consistently, reaching out, making these collaborations, concerts. We're consistent in a lot of things, but when it comes to programming, for some reason, it lacks the consistency. And I meet so many musicians, and many of them say, hey, I'm all about programming and this and that. But then when it comes to actually doing it, they're not doing it. So for some reason, it makes me think that it's just more than just musicians. Maybe it's the administrative side that's just way behind a couple of decades. I don't know. So I don't know how we could tackle that. How can we change that? What can we do as musicians? That's always the question.
Well, what demographic makes up these administrative sides and boards? I mean,
yeah. And the big donors who are so archaic that, you know, and I've heard this from a couple of major symphony administrators that, you know, sometimes donors have said, you know, this season you have to do Beethoven symphony, this or that, and I know I won't say the symphony, but one symphony in particular said, we did that last year, we can't be programming the same thing. He's like, well, I have this huge amount of money that I was going to give, I won't be doing that. So sponsors and donors also have a big say. You know, maybe there's a big sponsor that is giving $500,000, $1 million, and he wants or she wants whatever she wants or he wants. So it's a tough position to be in, because as arts organizations, we're trying to get money. We're trying to get money from donors, but we also want to program and push the field to the next level. So it's this constant battle that's really tough to get through. And maybe the European system is a little bit better because it's state sponsored, but then that has other problems. So it's just problems all over.
But I mean, but you are right. I mean, even with that, there is still a lot of hesitancy and cowardice and mental laziness in just not even trying at all. Like just not taking that chance and seeing what happens. And they'll do a program of Chauvet Saint George and Amy Beach, you know, and attendance is low, and so they take that one, you know, that one concert as the sign that no one will ever do it or no one will ever come. Yeah.
Well, maybe you should take a sign. I don't know how many kids enjoy the first couple of lessons on their instruments. Maybe we should take them out of school because they're crying when they get home. We don't want to take the violin lesson because I don't know how to play it. But again, it comes down to consistency. You can't just give up on something just because it didn't happen once.
Absolutely.
So, on a fun note, what do you do other than music? What are some fun things that you do? Watch the Olympics or something?
That's funny that you say that. I do not watch the Olympics. I'm actually quite a big opponent of the Olympics. I was actually part of the No Boston Olympics 2024 and No Boston Olympics group, where that actors group that fought against the Olympics coming to Boston.
Wow. Okay. What's the reason?
Oh my gosh! What? I mean, goodness, what reason isn't there? The Olympics are terrible for a community. They have caused more harm than good. I remember being in Florida around the time that the Olympics happened in Georgia, which is why I so quickly jumped on board.
1996 Atlanta, yes.
And I remember reading about them demolishing project housing and having stacks of pre-filled out citations where they put homeless people on buses and shipped them down the interstate, and drop them off in random cities like Gainesville, and the fact that there's so much to do with flash gentrification, like it really hurts those who can't afford. There's tons of human trafficking that goes on with the Olympics. There's the infrastructure changes that happen always benefit more wealthy areas. It's a land grab for developers. I mean, those are just smaller things, but there's so much
which not many people think about.
No one thinks about because they think about seeing these incredible things on television, but they never know about what happens to the city that hosts. Like when the Super Bowl was in San Francisco and the mayor kicked the homeless out and made make sure that no video camera showed a homeless person. They had to show the best, the best
at the city. Yeah.
It's really bad. Or the fact that if you go to London, there are cameras everywhere. The invasion of privacy and surveillance has been kicked to the nth level. I remember those pictures of seeing, a lady walking her dog next to a park with a massive missile installation.
Wow.
And the fact that you lose access to those things as well. You know, when they proposed the Boston Olympics, one of the things in the bid was putting the beach volleyball stadium in the middle of the Boston Common, which, first of all, meant just absolutely destroying this historic place and uprooting trees that have been around since as long as we've been around. And those things don't just go back. It's bad. The Olympics are bad.
Yeah.
I could go on and on and on.
Let's jump to something else.
Yes, we should jump to something else. But for fun, sorry.
I still want to hear what do you do other than music?
I sleep a lot whenever I can. I love coffee as a hobby.
You're in the perfect city.
I know. I also love the whiskey as a hobby. I'm very interested in distilling. I love reading about those things, and I'm also a big comic book nerd.
Wow.
Oh my God, it's like anything.
Is that what your Twitter account or your Facebook account?
Dr. Fate?
Yes.
One of my favorite comic book characters. I'm probably more into Wonder Woman than anything else. But Wonder Woman and Dr. Fate. I mean, I know as much about Wonder Woman as I do about Bach. More? That's not important. But I don't know. I just, whatever I find, I'll just find something. I don't really necessarily have any honest, solid hobbies because I travel so much. And I get bored so often that if I start something, I'll go and come home, a month or 2 months later, and I'm just, okay, well, I don't know, want to start from ground zero again.
Yeah. We talked about this a little bit, going back to the music, audiences. And, one thing that I find frustrating sometimes in Seattle, I go to these concerts and I see these wonderful musicians, well-programmed concert, and very few audience members. And I always think about why is that the case? What, are we doing something wrong with classical musicians, or are the audiences not understanding what we're doing? And I know this is a big question, but based on what you've observed, what you see, what do you think? Is it our fault, their fault, both of our faults, or no fault?
I think it's a little and a lot of everything. I don't. If any of us knew specifically what the key was, we probably wouldn't have this issue. But we still haven't really figured it out. Our maybe the problem or the solution is just too unreachable for any musician at our level to really go for. Maybe, the solution may very well, and I actually think a lot of it does lie in education, public education, starting kids young, hearing music and learning songs and recorders and taking field trips to see rehearsals at the symphony, which happened to me when I was a kid. That there's not much of an NEA anymore. There's not much public assistance and government funding for that kind of stuff anymore. I think when you kind of give that exposure and instill that interest and love at a very young age, even if you go off and do something else, and even if you find other interests, that still sticks with you, and that comes back later. And we don't have that anymore. And I don't think, and on top of that, so much has changed in even the things that we do have access to, which is, such as how the recording industry has changed so much. Like, no one goes to CD shops and browses and buys things and listens to discs at Borders and so forth. Everything is accessible right here. So and it seems to be harder and harder to just find those random things, and it's harder to actually gain a lot of traction quickly. And get attention from people outside of your small areas or whatnot. It's hard to say. Who knows?
But the education is very important. And I was talking to Robert Dick, who's a NYU music professor, and he was saying a lot of the same things. That when I was growing up, there were we were able to attend these concerts, and he was talking about how he knows so many kids that are don't have that access, don't have that opportunity. But then we have, you know, a lot of private organizations or community music organizations that are trying to do these things, but it still should be on a public school level as well, so everyone has access to that, not just the private little institutions.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that, again, probably contributes to the fact that there aren't many people of color,
Yeah, that's true.
who are interested in this,
Yeah.
because they just don't have the access to it. Yeah, I definitely remember Wednesdays, every Wednesday, going to the auditorium and learning folk songs, learning every American song, and, you know, songs about Johnny Appleseed and Paul. You know, like we learned our folk tunes. We learned things that are important. We learned the recorder and the auto harp and played around with all these things. And we went to the university and sat in on university orchestra rehearsals. And, you know, Raymond Showbaz, who's the orchestra director at University of Florida, would just come out and grab a kid and make you come up and conduct the orchestra. It was, I mean, just the coolest experience you've ever had, you know, as a third grader, fourth grader.
And I still do that with my youth orchestras.
Really?
Both of my youth orchestras do outreach programs, and with Bainbridge, actually, Bainbridge Youth Orchestra, we have another outreach tour coming up on Bainbridge, and I always have kids come up and conduct. So it's great to see them, and I pick stuff that's very easy for the orchestra to play. So no matter, it's kids playing, so no matter what the conductor does, they'll still play it. So it's a really great experience. People, I mean, we reach a lot of kids when we do this, and that's how we get more kids involved in our youth orchestra program, which has grown over time. But that's a great way. Again, I just wish it was more and more of it, and on the public school level, because that's one of the reasons why actually the Bainbridge Youth Orchestra started 20 or so years ago, is because there was no music in the school, especially string orchestras. So the parents got together and they made the Bainbridge Youth Orchestra, so kids who play string instruments could join the youth orchestra and play, and so give them access. So anyways, it's been great chatting with you. Anything you want to add? What's next for you?
What's next for me? Well, of course, we have our concert this weekend at St. Mark's with Pacific Music Works. After that, I head back to Boston for just a little vocal rest, and then I'm off to other points. I think San Diego for Podium, San Diego, and then a few things at home in Boston, which I'm looking forward to. I think actually something that I'm really excited about is last year or the year before, a local Seattle composer, Eric Banks, was commissioned by Coro Allegro, which is a mixed ensemble that's basically LGBT and ally mixed community chorus, and they commissioned Eric to write a piece on the basically the life and death of David Kato, who was the Ugandan LGBTQIA activist who was killed in his home. And so Eric created a passion on his life, and I created the role of David for this, and it's really beautiful, it's really powerful, and it very much parallels, basically, and it's almost like a Bach passion. It's a chord for double chorus and marimba, two marimbas as well, and then David stands alone as kind of the evangelist Christ figure, because all the words that are sung of his are words that he himself spoke or wrote. And it goes, and there's chorales and so forth, and really cool tuba choruses of angry mobs are supported. Like it's just a beautiful work. And so Coro Allegro is recording it this May, and so that's kind of what I'm really kind of looking forward to.
And Eric Banks is a wonderful artist who's, for those of you who don't know, Seattle-based, and also has an amazing organization, choir, Esoterics. And so I gotta have him on at some point.
You gotta have him on. He's a great guy.
Yeah, I've talked to him many times. I just not on record.
And speaking of record, the Baroque ensemble I collaborate with quite frequently, Agave Baroque, the Bay Area-based period ensemble. We just released our second album together, which is Peace in Our Time, which is an album of the music of 17th century German Baroque composers, basically composers who lived our wrote and reflected on the 30 Years' War, since this year is the 40th anniversary of the beginning of the 30 Years' War. And so it's basically music that really carries a lot of the weight and pain that came out of that period. And again, that to me relates to music I've known, because I mean, I feel like blacks also had a period in time of ugliness, and we came out at some point creating music based on our pain, to help us through. I'm not sure exactly when that happened 400 years ago, and until maybe recently. But it's been released for digital download, but the physical disc should be released sometime in the next few weeks.
And you mentioned some names before we leave. You mentioned some names of composers and artists that have inspired you early on. Can you again say those names for those who might want to listen to some things that they've never heard before? Some composers that you know that many people might not know, or artists that you recommend for our listeners?
Florence Price, absolutely incredible music. NEC grad, who's actually getting her much due attention. Finally. We're actually singing a set of some of her pieces in the concert, and just they're arresting. Definitely Florence Price. I would say Dizzy Gillespie is a big one. Great trumpeter, of course, and he kind of influences my ornamental style in Baroque music, and we also have the same birthday, October 21st. So
I didn't know.
Pretty close to him in that way. I would say Isabel Leonardo is a great composer, Italian nun from the 17th, 18th century. There's lots of great ones. Antonio Lotti is a great one. I think he's the person that should be, who deserves all the attention we give Vivaldi, honestly. He's an incredible composer himself. There's so many. But
thank you so much.
Thank you.
It's been a pleasure. I hope we do this again at some point. And thanks for talking about things that I care about, I talk about, but every time I get a guest on, and I've had many wonderful guests, but sometimes some artists are afraid to talk about some of these so-called controversial topics, whether it's black composers or diversity problems in classical music. And I'm happy you were able to clearly articulate all the things that you talked about.
Oh, that's what we do is for. I think that's kind of our providence. I mean, we are ultimately, as artists, we're peddlers of emotion and feelings, and we kind of have a responsibility to make sure those things are never forgotten, and that we understand that those things exist in everything, be it race issues, sexuality issues, gender issues, political issues. If we're not going to speak up about this, who else will? I think we should be the first to shout. And as a trained vocalist, my voice carries pretty far. So,
on that note, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Have a good night.